The Supremacy of Christ, a CSI/FBI interpretive journey investigation through Colossians 1:15-20 CSI/FBI interpretive journey motto. The evidence of Scripture reveals the glory of Christ. The investigator must submit to the verdict of the Word. Opening declaration, grace and peace from Bishop Michael Anthony McDaniel, CSI, critical scripture investigator, FBI, forensic Bible investigator, and senior investigator of Westside Grace Ministries. Rightly dividing the word of truth, 2 Timothy 2:15. Rightly dividing the word of truth through critical scripture, investigation, and forensic biblical analysis. The word of truth remains the final authority and the evidence being examined. Through the biblical mandate of rightly dividing Scripture, we engage in critical Scripture investigation and forensic biblical analysis, carefully examining context, language, audience, structure, and theological claims. Every conclusion must be tested against the evidence of Scripture, producing truth revealed through faithful interpretation and obedient application. Your study title, The Supremacy of Christ, the investigation of Christ's identity, authority, and cosmic preeminence. CSI/FBI Step 0, pericope identification, scene boundary control, pericope definition. A pericope is a defined section of Scripture containing a complete thought, event, argument, or theological unit. Before interpretation begins, the investigator must establish the boundaries of the biblical scene to prevent extracting statements from their intended context. Investigative scene text. Under examination, Colossians 1:15-20 biblical scene, Paul's revelation concerning the person and work of Jesus Christ. Scene boundary, beginning, Christ revealed as the visible image of the invisible God. Development, Christ's authority over creation, the church, and redemption. Conclusion, Christ's reconciliation through the blood of his cross. CSI/FBI, Step 1 Biblical Case File Information Book, Colossians author, the Apostle Paul. Date approximately AD 60-62 during Paul's imprisonment. Location written Rome. Traditional Pauline imprisonment setting. Audience. The believers at Colossae, a congregation influenced by competing philosophies and religious teachings that diminish Christ's sufficiency. Genre Pauline epistle, doctrinal instruction, correction, encouragement, and practical application. CSI/FBI Step 2. Biblical timeline placement. Colossians belongs to the period of Paul's imprisonment after his missionary journeys. Historical placement, Christ's earthly ministry, approximately AD 27-30. Paul's conversion, approximately AD 33-36. Missionary expansion, approximately AD 46-57, Roman imprisonment letters, approximately AD 60. 62 Colossians addresses a critical theological question. Who is Jesus Christ, and is he sufficient for salvation, spiritual growth, and reconciliation with God? CSI/FBI Step 3. The Biblical Evidence, Colossians 1:15-20 KJV. Who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature? For by him were all things created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. For it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell, and having made peace through the blood of his cross, by him to reconcile all things unto himself, By him I say, whether they be things in earth or things in heaven. CSI/FBI Step 4, Evidence Classification Evidence Level 1. Scripture explicitly states finding 1. Christ is the image of the invisible God. Evidence, who is the image of the invisible God? The Greek concept behind image communicates representation and manifestation. Christ does not merely represent God externally, he reveals God personally. Compare John 14:9 KJV. Jesus saith unto him, Have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that hath seen me hath seen the Father. Evidence Level 2, Scripture, reasonably implies Christ is not a created being, but the Creator himself. Paul states, For by him were all things created. The phrase all things includes every category: heaven, earth, visible creation, invisible creation, thrones, dominions, principalities, powers. The evidence points to Christ possessing authority over all created realities. Evidence Level 3, Assumption or Tradition. A person may assume Christ is only a great teacher, prophet, or spiritual messenger. The Colossian evidence rejects that conclusion. The verdict of the text presents Christ as Creator, Sustainer, Head of the Church, Redeemer, Reconciler. CSI/FBI Step 5, The Supremacy Investigation Evidence Exhibit A, Christ over creation. For by him were all things created. The first claim Paul establishes is not what Christ does, it is who Christ is. Before Paul discusses Christ's work, he establishes Christ's identity. The order matters. Identity precedes activity. Christ's authority comes from his person. And as a CSI/FBI Step 6, Christ over continuation. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. The word consist carries the idea of holding together. Creation does not operate independently from Christ. The universe is not merely created by Christ, it continues because of Christ. CSI/FBI Step 7, Christ over the church, and he is the head of the body, the church. The church does not belong to human leadership, religious tradition, cultural influence, personal preference. The church belongs to Christ. He is not merely founder, he is head. CSI/FBI Step 8, Christ over resurrection, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead. Firstborn does not mean Christ was the first person ever raised. Scripture records others being raised before Christ. The term communicates supremacy, rank, and preeminence. Christ is the supreme resurrected one because his resurrection guarantees the future resurrection of believers. CSI/FBI Step 9, Christ over redemption, having made peace through the blood of his cross. The supremacy of Christ is not only cosmic, it is personal. The Creator became Redeemer. The one who created all things became the one who reconciles sinners. CSI/FBI Step 10, Exegesis versus Eisegesis, Investigation. Exegesis, drawing meaning from the text. Christ is supreme because Scripture identifies him as Creator, Sustainer, Head, and Redeemer. Eisegesis, reading personal ideas into the text. Christ is important only because he helps me achieve my personal goals. The passage does not begin with human benefit. It begins with Christ's glory. CSI/FBI, Step 11, Cognitive Load, Investigation, Intrinsic Load. The complexity of understanding Christ's relationship to creation, eternity, church, redemption. Extraneous load, false teachings that add requirements beyond Christ. Germane load, the transformation produced by correctly understanding Christ's supremacy. CSI/FBI Step 12, Existential and epistemological critique. Existential question: who truly has authority over my life? Epistemological question: how do I know who Christ is? Answer: not through human opinion, through revealed scripture. CSI/FBI Step 13 Track Salvation is a person. The evidence reveals salvation is not merely a doctrine. Salvation is found in a person, Jesus Christ. He is the Creator who made us, the Redeemer who purchased us, the Head who governs us, the Reconciler who restores us. CSI/FBI Step 14 Final Investigative Verdict. After examining the evidence, the verdict is Jesus Christ possesses absolute supremacy over creation, the church, redemption, and all spiritual authority. Any teaching that reduces Christ below his revealed identity contradicts the evidence of Scripture. CSI/FBI Step 15 Final Investigative Challenge. The question is not merely, do you believe Jesus exists? The investigative question is, does your life acknowledge the supremacy of the Christ revealed in Scripture? If Christ is supreme over all things, he must be supreme over our thinking, our priorities, our worship, our obedience. Closing declaration. The word of truth remains the final authority and the evidence examined. Through the responsibility of rightly dividing Scripture, we engage in critical Scripture investigation and forensic biblical analysis, carefully examining context, language, audience, structure, and theological claims. Every conclusion must be tested against the evidence of Scripture, producing truth revealed through faithful interpretation and obedient application. This investigation has been conducted through the CSI/FBI Interpretive Journey Model, enhanced with the Pericope Investigative Checklist. Like, share, and follow this ministry.